Great, so we are recording now. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got Jennifer and Andre from Trans-Africa Safaris down in South Africa joining us, and of course Johan, who oversees all of their logistics here in the States, and then me, who just got back from about 3 weeks in South Africa and really looking forward to sharing a little bit of my learnings with you. So I am going to do a little screen share here. All right, so in my trip, I covered a lot of ground. The reason you see Fireblade first is just that the first half of my trip was all private charters around South Africa. And I'll talk a little bit about Fireblade. Now, of course, everything that I did, you can still do with scheduled. It's just that sometimes scheduled does not happen with the same regularity as we're used to. And then also depending on your clients and the number of guests that are traveling together in one group, I think we've all kind of seen that families and friends are liking to stay together and to bubble a little bit more often, and Fireblade is just a fantastic aviation solution for you in South Africa. Then we stayed at the residence in Johannesburg, Sabi Sabi, specifically Earth Lodge, Swalu Kalahari, which I do work with and represent here in the States, which I believe you all know, Ellerman House, Grootbos, and then I went back to Cape Town and I started to hop around every single night, which we are all very familiar with as well. I know we've all been there at some point in our careers. One and only Cape Town, Gorgeous George, the Silo, all of those are in Cape Town, Steenberg out in the Constantia wine country, and then Lanzerac Estate and Leo Estate out in Stellenbosch and Franschhoek. So I'm just gonna start with the actual logistics of the trip. I and Johan, because we're based in Denver, we're Star Alliance, and so that's generally what we are flying on. And I flew primarily on Lufthansa into South Africa. It was actually United and Lufthansa in, and then outbound was a little bit different. I had my Lufthansa flight canceled, and so I ended up flying out on Ethiopian and back on United. I'm still seeing less than full cabins. Upgrades are possible. In the past, I've flown on miles. This trip I paid for. And everything was very seamless for me, except one big thing is that if you are flying United right now over the Atlantic, they're not doing any special meals. That's an issue for me because I have celiac. So for a flight to not offer any special meals is more difficult for me. I can tend to plan ahead, though of course airports don't have the same number of restaurants and shops open. But I was also expecting to be able to have something to eat in the lounge because we've flown through Frankfurt many, many times this year. And this time when I got there in December, because lounges are considered restaurants, they are no longer allowed to offer the same food and beverage service as they used to in Germany. So different countries are going to be a little bit different. I'm always going to say, look into the flight routing, look into where your clients are going, and then figure out what's going to work best for them. The kind of inside joke of the trip became that I had an 8-hour layover and I could eat bananas, which is pretty much true. And you can't eat in the lounge, you have to leave the lounge. So I was eating bananas like on the floor in front of the lounge. It was one of the most unceremonious lounge experiences I've ever had in my life. So just prepare for certain changes like that, and they're going to happen, quickly. So especially if you have any clients that do have allergies, as I do, really encourage them to just plan ahead. The other thing that I'll say when it comes to the flight logistics is this is the first time that I was not able to have my luggage checked through. Now, this is also the first time I checked luggage. I was bringing things to South Africa. I had a major issue with them not being able to check my luggage through. And so I spent a lot of time in Frankfurt having Lufthansa actually move my luggage on my behalf. If I could stress anything right now for you, for your clients, especially if they're looking to travel in Q1, which I totally support and I think that they should, direct flights as often as possible. Do not check luggage. Prepare ahead of time with anything that you might want on the flights. And try to avoid transiting multiple times. I did not know this, but by the time I was returning from South Africa, when many of my flights had been canceled and I had to kind of keep getting rebooked, I did not know, but I learned I was not allowed to transit twice through Europe. So I was rebooked on something that was going through Vienna and then Frankfurt onto the States. And by the time I went to the airport to check in, they said, you can't do that. You can only transit once through Europe. I've also spoken with people that are flying to other countries in Southern Africa that are looking to fly through South Africa because they would rather fly on a carrier that will make them have to fly through South Africa. If you can at all possible, right now, again, I'm talking Q1, and then as we look to the year, things will kind of constantly change. But if you can at all avoid traveling through Europe right now and transiting through the Middle East, go for it. If you can avoid multiple stops in Africa, please do that. Single country, it's just going to be easier. Logistically, things are changing. And when I did this trip, and you'll see some photos of people I traveled with, on the outbound, 3 people did have issues with their flights, and on the return, 2 people, and then I did. Everyone got there and everyone got home and nobody had a problem, but flexibility is definitely something that your clients need to be aware of. And again, just all of the things that I said could possibly help to alleviate any issues. Now, the COVID alert essay, the reason I have that here, for my entry, I did have to show my COVID test, as everybody would have to, and I had to have my temperature taken. In Frankfurt, before they would issue my boarding pass, they in Frankfurt asked me if I had downloaded the app, and they made me show it to them. I know other people that landed in South Africa, they were never asked if they had the app downloaded, and they never had to show it. In the end, I would encourage having your guests do that, because it ended up being something that I needed later on in the trip. I was around somebody who then tested positive for COVID, and as long as your Bluetooth is on, then the app will work. And the app did get in touch with me after that person put in their confidential information and said, you were exposed to somebody who has tested positive on such and such a day. These are all of the next steps that we would recommend doing. So it worked. It gave me an alert. And if I shut my Bluetooth off, it would also say, we don't work, or the app doesn't work unless Bluetooth is on. Now, to avoid any care or concern, I have since tested negative multiple times. Every single person that I traveled with tested negative multiple times as well. But, it's a possibility. And so I like the fact that South Africa has done this, because it's just another level of care. We arrived in Johannesburg and we had a VIP meet and assist set up for us. I will always encourage you doing that now, especially. I know Jennifer and Andre will cover this a little bit more later on, but they told me that this is something that they always include in their itineraries too. The reason for me, it is more important than ever, is that, first of all, look at these queues. Oh, here, look at these queues. Your lines to even get to passport control, because of document and temperature checks, are a lot longer than they've ever been before. By the time my flight landed, it was 15 minutes from landing to luggage, because they got me through that line immediately. It was not an issue for me, but one of the people I was traveling with who had an issue with flights, someone traveling from California on KLM to Amsterdam. By the time she arrived in Amsterdam, KLM canceled the flight, rerouted her on Qatar through Doha. By the time she got to Joburg, she had 2 hours validity left on her COVID test. So again, things could possibly happen. Do everything that you can, working with your partners, Jennifer and Andre and Trans-Africa Safaris, to ensure that these things are built into the itinerary. It's just going to make it more seamless. The other thing is that because of some of the disruptions in the flights, 2 of the people I was traveling with flat out missed every part of Johannesburg. They landed with about an hour before our charter flights. I believe that it's great to start an itinerary in Cape Town right now, especially because most people are going to spend more nights in Cape Town anyway. So if something goes awry, then they've already, they're still there. They're not missing their safari or maybe their more expensive parts of the trip. But if you have people that are starting in Johannesburg for the time being, I would encourage booking 2 nights at the beginning to avoid any stress that could come up of changed flights and canceled flights and reroutings. If they end up in Joburg for 2 nights, well, you've collectively selected a great hotel that's going to have wonderful food and spa, and they're going to relax, and maybe they're going to go and they're going to see something in town, and they're just going to have a nice couple of days. And if they end up having an issue, well, then they are not missing charters. They're not missing scheduled that might be flying with less regularity as well. So just avoid any kind of stress and book 2 nights in Joburg, my recommendation. Otherwise, start in Cape Town. So we went to the residence, and this is a property that I really do love. It's 3 separate private homes or villas that were combined into one. One of the buildings used to be, I think it's the Chinese or the Japanese embassy. Yeah. So because of that, very private, surrounded by greenery, but with 3 outdoor pools and a tennis court and lawns to walk around. You've got ample space to be outside. They have a wonderful art collection. They've got many rooms with balconies, so you can have outdoor fresh air relaxation. And the way that it's separated is, again, perfect for social distancing. It's not one hotel where everyone's together. It's these 3 separate villas put together into one with archways and walkways. And then you're going to start to see different amenities, welcome amenities, and you're going to start to see every hotel and property, they're all abiding by the right guidelines. They're just doing it in different ways. So for instance, here, I love this. We showed up and our welcome amenity was a mask and hand sanitizer. And there's hand sanitizer in the room, and it still was with a bottle of wine. And one person went to the spa, and somebody went to the Apartheid Museum, and somebody else went and had like a lunch with a friend, and I did nothing. I stayed at the hotel, I relaxed, I sorted out logistics of the people I was traveling with. And then I will say, actually, the one time I did leave was I went to something called the Wilds, which is a 5-minute drive from the residence. So the residence actually is closer to some of the things in Johannesburg that I and Johan love, like a Maboneng area, than some other hotels. They do all of their own private transportation. You saw that in the previous slide. And what I like about the Wilds is that it is a little nature reserve that you can go and walk around in. There's art, you get views of the city, fresh air, sunshine. For me, that's a great way to get over jet lag. Then when we were ready to go to Sabi Sabi, her name is Grace. Grace is lovely. She's absolutely wonderful. She works with us at Fireblade Aviation. So Fireblade is, oh, I'm going to point this out because we're going to see it here. I love that he's spraying all of the luggage right away. So Fireblade Aviation is the private aviation facility that is owned by the Oppenheimers, and so it works in collaboration with Swallow. Any guests going to or from Swallow will be flying with Fireblade Aviation, but then they are also a full-fledged private charter company, completely 5-star across the board. It's the only private aviation facility that can do customs and immigration on site at the property that we have, the lounge that we have in Johannesburg. But you can see right away, I haven't even gotten out of the vehicle yet. My temperature is being taken. All information is being logged. I've mentioned this in some other webinars. Have your clients have their passport like on a phone or very handy, because they're going to be asked for their passport information, their phone number, when they get their temperatures taken all the time. So temperature taken, masks on, into Fireblade. This right now that you see is downstairs where they're spraying our luggage. And then you go upstairs. Upstairs is just for guests of Swallow. And where, well, unless people have rented private spaces here. Where this really plays, I think, a vital role in traveling right now is that upstairs, Fireblade has a full gym and workout facility. You're looking at a photo right now of the spa, 2 day rooms with beds, private staterooms, showers, along with food and wine and internet and a lot of other amenities. So if I think of the 2 people traveling with me that had this whole ordeal, and then they landed with an hour before our charter, they were brought right over to Fireblade, took a shower, had some food, decompressed a little bit. We pushed back, the charter by just a couple of minutes so that everybody could kind of settle in. And then you go through all of your same processes of social distancing and sanitizing and making sure that you've got your masks on, and then you board your plane and you take off. Fireblade has a fleet of planes. When you're flying to or from Swallow, we use their PC-12s. We always fly pressurized cabins and with 2 pilots. And the pilots were always wearing masks as well. We felt very safe, and it's really just an amazing ride. So we flew to Sabi Sabi. we stayed at Earth Lodge. And again, now what I'm going to say is you're going to see similar things throughout. Everyone just does it in their own way. Here, our welcome drink was right next to our welcome sanitization. It's a stand. It's just like any other one that you see, foot pedal operated, don't touch anything, temperatures, sanitize, please make yourself at home. We've got a beautiful afternoon spread, showed us to our rooms and basically said for the next couple of days, this is what is now on the agenda. And Sabi Sabi is just, it's a property I absolutely love. What they've done, which is interesting, Sabi Sabi has 4 separate properties. And again, we stayed at Earth Lodge. As of right now, Sabi Sabi has taken all of Little Bush Camp out of inventory, and that is their quarantine center if needed. So all of these properties have answers to what happens if another guest gets sick, what happens if I get sick, what happens if we need to stay. But the fact that they've taken an entire property out, I think is really remarkable. And Sabi Sabi, just like Swallow, can do COVID testing on site. They announced that last year. I like that I can say that, in December of last year. Good riddance to 2020. I've said it before and I will keep saying it. Safari is one of the safest places that you can be. You can social distance, you can be outside, you can be walking and horse riding, you can be on night drives. You just have such an incredible experience of being back in the bush. And the people that I traveled with, this was their first time to Africa, so it was this year. So it was also really sweet for me to see people having the experience that I've had of peace, calm. I didn't know I needed this as much as I needed this. I have never felt more like myself. I really believe in the regenerative properties of being in Africa and being on safari. You cannot beat it. I also love that there are properties that are doing all of their like cleaning and sanitization in public. You don't want to hide it. You want people to see what you're really doing. So that's why I've got these 2 photos here. I mean, we got off of the vehicle and right away it was, we're sanitizing the vehicle. So they're doing everything right. Same thing, you're gonna still have your sundowners, you're gonna have your G&Ts, you're gonna have a great time out in the bush. But I do like this. I staged this because I just thought it was so comical. They had sprayed down everything with the bleach before they put out everything, and then they gave us all the hand sanitizer. And I was like, ooh, this is like, you know, sundowners in the new normal. Like, just throw some bleach on there and let's call it a day. So that's why I took that. But again, none of our activities were lacking. There was nothing that we couldn't do because of the time that we're traveling in, including spa. So I am a spa snob, and I went to the spa at pretty much every single property that I stayed at. But part of that for me also is it's so much less expensive to get spa treatments in South Africa than it is here in the States. In the States during 2020, I did not get anything done. And can I tell you, my body loved massage and like, I mean, the foot treatments and everything. It's so relaxing. I know I am talking to people right now who have clients where it's like the girls' getaway weekend or the spa weekend for the moms. I would happily tell my girlfriends to not do one of the 5-star spa weeks here in the US, and instead a week at the spa in South Africa where you're also in wine country and on safari, and then go and do something that's even more in depth as well. Incredible dining throughout the entire property. I love this. You've got your feet in the water. They've got this table set up in a kind of covered pool there. So really special. We went and we had dinners in the wine cellar, out in the bush, in the main dining area. They had other guests there. And again, they're always going to set you up where you're just with your travel partner or party. I have an affinity for things like the Bushman community, and at Swallow we have San Bushman etchings in the rocks, and Sabi Sabi has San Bushman paintings. And this is the one spot on property where they have them, and we went for a walk out there to see them. And then again, little things that might be different. You're not gonna have your hand towels, you're gonna have paper because it's more single use. So it does not make it less of a 5-star experience to not have your white cloth napkins. I don't particularly like single use, but that's what they have to do right now. And so again, it doesn't lessen the experience, it's just different. So back on the PC-12, and we flew to Swallow. And just like any other property, you're gonna see staff wearing masks, you're gonna see the hand sanitizing stations, but you're also going to see every other part of the experience that you know and you love. So this photo on the bottom left is going right into the boutique, which then leads to a gallery. The other side of the building is where we have our photo studio that has binoculars and lenses and computer equipment and printers. It's just an absolutely remarkable photographic studio. But I love them telling me a story too of how someone from South Africa came up to Swallow with their family for a week just to get away once they could travel again. And the person also had an interview though for like a CEO position with a job, and they just closed down the photographic studio for an hour, and he basically had his interview there. And I say that and I stress that because you can still work from Africa, you can still school from Africa, you can just travel and enjoy being in Africa. But really, again, whatever your clients are looking for, we can all make happen for them. On the bottom right here, welcome amenity was from Jan. So quick little update there. Jan Hendrik is South Africa's first Michelin-starred chef, and his restaurant is in Nice, France. And now that we are able to get back on track with all of our building at Swallow, they're finishing up what's called Klein Jan or Little Jan, which is his restaurant on property with us. So he works with Marnus, our head chef, on the entire culinary program. And sometime toward, I would say, spring is when Jan is going to be open. I cannot tell you any more about it than that, but I did do a walkthrough of the restaurant, and it is going to be one of the most sought after dining experiences in the world. I cannot wait to actually be able to say more about that. But I did get to see that. And Swallow's also done a lot of really great things during lockdown. We've done a lot of, well, I shouldn't say that, we're not in that stage anymore, but when people weren't traveling earlier in the year, they did a lot of renovations on Tarkuni, the 5-bedroom villa that we have. And then also this upper right-hand corner is me on what's called the Naledi sleep out. Naledi means stars in Botswana. And basically, many of you have heard me speak about the Mallory sleep out before. This is an even like streamlined, raw, awesome experience for people. We've had guests out there already. This is truly under the stars, really beautiful and comfortable cots. You'll get a nice little spread of food, but you are out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, sleeping underneath the stars. Kids can be out there as well. So now we've got 2 sleep out experiences, which is great. We went and we did our horse riding, which is great at Swallow. You can also go horse riding at Gripbos, even though we didn't do it. You can also go horse riding at Lanzarote, even though I didn't do it. So, for equestrians, lots of opportunities to be on a horse in South Africa. We, of course, went and saw the meerkats. We spent time with our researchers. The thing with Swallow that's so special is it pairs with every other of your kind of favored safari properties because it is just so vastly, vastly different. And then I'll also mention, so here I am at the spa again. You dine in different areas all the time. We're up on top of a dune having an amazing sunset as well. We dined in the Boma. You can dine out on your deck. There were guests that had just been there that dined privately in their suite every single meal for like the week that they were at Swallow. And again, we have our own healthcare center on property that we run for all of our staff and their families, but then also for the larger community because we are so far remote where we are located in South Africa. And then of course for guests. So again, we are doing COVID testing on site and we have a full healthcare center for anyone who might need it regardless of what's going on with COVID. Then we flew down to Cape Town and we went to Ellerman House. We got picked up at the ExecuJet terminal, which is where Fireblade lands in Cape Town, had private vehicles transport us right over, and right away, QR codes. So you're gonna scan your QR code, you're gonna fill out your health form, temperature check, same. This is pretty much standard now. What I really liked though with what Ellerman did is you can see in the dish another QR code there, but next to that is the key. So here they basically said, we have cleaned and fogged your room and no one has been in your room since we shut that door. What that means is your key is inside. I'm going to show you to your room and use the master key. You open the door, and then you can invite anyone in with your luggage or to set things up for you if you need. But otherwise, you know, no one has been in your room and no one has touched anything whatsoever that you're going to touch once you're in there. Welcome amenity was a lovely mask, some hand sanitizer as well. So right off the bat, ready to go. Yes, the spa is open here, but now this is what I did learn. So the spa is open in all of the properties that I went to, but there's gonna be some nuances. So for instance, a dry sauna is open, but a steam sauna is not. So I just say that because again, like anything, it might not be the 100% that you think. It might not be the I expect everything all the time, but they're gonna hit the mark 98 to 99% of the time. It's just, well, maybe the steam room isn't available. And that's all for, your air quality and air circulation. The other thing that was interesting is here at Ellerman, I had to book the sauna. And at other properties like Liu, you would have to book the gym. And they're doing that now. So again, they're limiting the number of people that are in any of these spaces, and they can control the times and ensure that they're doing all of that deep cleaning in between. So I really truly feel you can rest assured that you have the whole experience, and they're doing everything they need to just change it a little bit to make sure that everyone is staying safe. At Ellerman, you've got beautiful spacious suites with balconies, fresh air overlooking the Atlantic, beautiful gardens, beautiful lawns. Again, I basically ate outside at every single meal. Every single table has its own little hand sanitizing kit as well. And the hotel itself has lots of little spaces where people to sit and socialize with their own group, where you're not interacting with other people. During the time when things were quiet last year, Ellerman actually created their own gin. They worked in partnership with Inverroche on that. They also created their own wine that was finally released this year as well. So they made some very good use of time, I would say, to get these things, along with a new custom BMW with one of my favorite artists, Nick Bladen, out. So they've done some really nice things to kind of just bring the experience up again, along with a lot of community and cultural projects that they initiated, music for meals and taking care of the local Cape Town kind of community. And I just show my turn down over here because at the end of the day, I'm really not going to cover Cape Town with you. I didn't leave the hotel. I didn't want to. I've been able to spend a lot of time seeing and doing things in Cape Town. So I'm going to let Jennifer and Andre talk about what's open and how city tours and things like that are working. I stayed at the hotel for the morning, I worked during the afternoon, and then we did an art tour and a wine gallery tour in the evening before dinner. I will say though, people that I traveled with went to the Oranjezette Market, they went to the old biscuit mill, they went down to Clifton and walked on the beach. They met up with their own friends and family in Cape Town. So everyone else went out and had an amazing day in Cape Town. Like I mentioned, we did an art tour. They've got an incredible curator on site, and she's just absolutely brilliant. Ellerman has one of the most impressive art collections in a hotel, and they've got sculptures throughout outside as well. I was speaking with Jennifer and Andre before we started this about the fact too that if you have any guests that are nervous about being inside a museum right now, but they want to go to South Africa and they want to have a great art experience, you can walk around Kirstenbosch. They've got outdoor sculpture. You can walk around the Dylan Lewis Sculpture Garden out in wine country. Properties here, same thing. I said Steenberg, I went for a walk outside. They've got beautiful sculpture throughout the property. So you can find those gems of a property that still offer you the ability to walk around and see art and be outside if you have a concern. But of course, Zeitsmoka is open, Norval is open, galleries are open. The gallery that you're looking at here is the Contemporary Art Gallery at Ellerman, and this is where we had our tour. I will just mention, as I said earlier about my dietary, I just do not think it's very difficult for properties to get it right. And I really appreciate a property like Ellerman that, well, because he hears me complain all the time when I get like a welcome amenity in my room that's not labeled. And I'm like, clearly this is not something that I can eat. So I like that in their pantry, everything is labeled. And I traveled with someone who's vegan, and then I have celiac, right? So, I mean, my goodness, we put these properties to the test, and one was better than the next, better than the next, better than the next. So it's possible, and certain properties really just do it incredibly well. Then we drove out to Grootbos, which is just past Hermanus. And it's always been one of my favorite properties. I think it's always been one of Johan's favorite properties as well. Here, wow, I mean, you get the best of the floral kingdom on the Cape. You know, you get to see and learn about all of the fynbos. You get to learn about all of the research that's going on and the conservation work that's going on. But then you also get the beach. And look at this. I mean, there was absolutely no one there. Pristine. Those are our footprints in the sand. You can go horse riding here. You can go for walks. You can go swimming. I don't have a photo yet. I'm trying to get it from the people I traveled with. But we full on were all in our costumes in the Atlantic, popping bubbly, pouring it into our glasses that are like bobbing around in the salt water. And we're just drinking our sundowners in the ocean. It was amazing. And Michael, who's the owner, who was with us, told us about a journalist who had just been there who kind of said, they did the same thing. They went for a swim. And the journalist said something about like, I felt as though it was a baptism. Now, I'm not religious. I'm not trying to get religious, but I understand that feeling of like 2020 just washed away. Right? I think that we all need a little of just washing away, the cleansing. I mean, so many cultures around the world, water is such a part of that healing experience. And so to be in the ocean was fantastic. They do have a boat for birders. We were going on a boat ride up the Clane River, and I think we spotted 50 birds in our boat ride. So you can boat, you can horse ride, you can walk, you can be on the beach, you can go for your safari where you're looking at all of the botanics. You can go and meet with the research and conservation team. Lots to do here. Along with, I do not think people really know the extent of the food and the wine experience here. So where you are now is closer to the Hemelanarda than it is to Stellenbosch and Franschhoek. And there are some delightful wines coming out of the Hemelanarda, and then regions to the east of where they are as well. And Michael and his sommelier, they go to the Cape Winemakers Guild auctions and they buy wines that are being laid down in the cellar for years. They can do verticals. They have wines that you cannot get in other places. Basically because they've bought them up. The food and the wine experience here is incredible. And if you do have people, especially that are interested in wine, I will always encourage them to explore the Hemelanarda and to explore some of the winemakers that are close to Grootbos, because it's a totally different experience of wine that they're producing out there. We met with the sommelier out in this little like fairy tale garden and just had a really lovely time. I mean, you can't beat this. The food is incredible. The service is incredible. The people are incredible. I could probably spend another half an hour just on Grootbos. And remember, they have 2 villas as well. So you've got the 2 separate properties, Garden and Forest Lodge. Forest Lodge better for adults, Garden better for families with children, but then 2 villas. You can keep yourself bubbled throughout your experience. And again, what did we do during the time that people were not traveling? Well, they actually went out onto their conservancy and they discovered an entirely new species to science. That's remarkable. And so what we did is we met with one of their artists in residence because they are creating, I have to look at my notes here because I know I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, a florilegium, which is a collection of scientific illustrations of plants. And that's going to be turned into a book for their anniversary next year. But in the meantime, you can buy prints and you can buy the originals. And again, what it gets down to at the heart of it is what they're doing for scientific discovery right now. So now I'm going to talk very quickly about probably the biggest hiccup in my trip, and stress once again over and over and over. Work with your preferred partner on the ground. Trans-Africa Safaris saved my behind on this one. I would never want to go through what I went through alone without resources, and they did a remarkable job. And I know that they've got other stories about kind of situations that they have solved in the past little while too. So the morning I woke up at Grootbos, I did receive a call that I was in contact with someone who had tested positive, which was hands down probably the worst day of my year. And I called Jennifer, And I just said, I need help. Like, I'm getting in a vehicle to drive back and this is what's going on. Help. She totally took care of absolutely everything for me. And by the time I got to One and Only, which is where I was going to be staying, this was the most, I mean, seamless experience I could have had. All of my plans for the afternoon had been canceled and rearranged, to the likes of my dinner at Nobu was all of a sudden now a private dinner in my room. They moved me into a suite in case I needed to quarantine for 14 days. And it was a suite on the ground floor with a balcony so that I could still get fresh air. They had already alerted the hotel to what was going on, and the hotel came back and said, well, this is what we're gonna do. When she gets there, this is who she asks for, and she stays outside. I never went into the hotel. They came out to me, they sanitized my bags, they sanitized me. There was one person who ever interacted with me, and it was from a management perspective. They walked me across the driveway, down a tunnel underground to the private clinic that they have underneath the hotel for their staff and their guests. I met with the nurse. I had both a rapid test and a lab test. I paid for both. You're going to have to pay for COVID tests if you need them when you're in South Africa, but TransAfrica can set them up for you under any circumstances. And that was it. I had my rapid test within about 15 minutes and they said, well, you're negative, and we're sending the lab test in so you get your paperwork in case I needed that to continue traveling. Then they showed me to the room. The welcome amenity came to the room and was handed to the one person who was in contact with me still. He did my entire check-in in the room, all of my paperwork, taking photographs of my passport, everything. The entire thing happened in the room with just the two of us. This is my welcome kit. That would have been there no matter what. And then he went and he spoke to their head of health and security and called me back within about, I don't remember right now, maybe like half an hour to an hour, and said, you're clear. You're welcome to go and enjoy the hotel. And I went and I looked at the art and I sat by the pool and I had an amazing dinner, and I was more relieved than I can ever remember being in my life. And I will absolutely, again, just stress, and I put it on social and I'll continue to say it, you need to work with people on the ground more than ever. And TransAfrica has done an amazing job, not just with me, but again, other situations in other countries with other guests. I then went on to Gorgeous George, which is a really fun kind of year-old boutique hotel, more in the city center. Great for your more hip, urban, millennial, younger travelers. Just like everyone, they're doing everything. You've got your sanitization. She's actually standing behind plexi, the mask on, all of the rooms sanitized and perfected. And I just love the kind of, raw urbanness. It's much more my personal style. Great art throughout. It's owned by somebody who has a wonderful art collection and continues to buy up nice pieces of art as well. And then the top floor, living room, kind of dining room, and then all of this outdoor space. They've got a rooftop pool, chaise lounges, and the ability to eat outside as well. So loved that. And I think it's just a great, again, hip, young option for people that do want to be in the city and easy to walk around. I went to the Silo, and of course, this is a property that really does not need a lot. Everyone knows it, loves it, I'm sure. But again, here I was really impressed. Things like the second I walked in, their COVID compliancy certificate is framed in true Royal Portfolio fashion right there on the welcome desk. All of your check-in happens up on the 6th floor now as well. They still have access to Zeitschmoka for guests that want to be doing tours of Zeitz. But again, for me, what was really nice is you've got the rooftop, you've got outdoor dining. I went and I swam laps in the pool with Table Mountain as my view, which was incredible. They're limiting the number of guests, they're limiting the number of outside guests that are there. So it's more open to guests of the hotel. I'm not mentioning all of the details of every property, but it will be in my trip report. Gorgeous George took the entire 5th floor of the hotel out as a quarantine center. The Silo has two-story suites out of inventory as isolation rooms if needed, and they're adjoining so that if it's a family, part of the family can be in one and family can be in another. So, you've got everybody doing the right thing, looking out for the safety and the security of their own staff, along with, of course, all of the guests. You've got outdoor space, even if you're right there in the waterfront in a more modern hotel. It was just, again, a wonderful experience. Went out to Steenberg. If you have guests that are not comfortable staying in a big hotel in the city or even a boutique hotel in the city, but they want to explore Cape Town because they can still do day trips, they can still go around the peninsula, but maybe they want a little bit more remoteness. Steenberg is a beautiful wine estate in Constantia. You can walk from your hotel through the property, again, go and see all that wonderful art, to where they've got some of their wonderful restaurants and wine tasting. So wine tasting, still possible, still happening, just in a different way. Here I was upgraded to a suite. And so a couple of things as you're talking to your guests. First of all, right now, booking and traveling right now, you have the best opportunity for some of the most wow upgrades imaginable because properties are just not full and they want to do the best that they possibly can do for their guests. I think everyone I spoke to, they just want to be generous and go above and beyond and say thank you for coming and staying with us. So room upgrades, better now than they will ever be again. But outside of that, I will really encourage, if you've got guests that can spend just a little bit more, now is also the time to book suites, to make sure you've got balconies, to be somewhere where you've got outdoor space. I myself did not want to run around and do wine tasting in 5 different estates. I wanted to enjoy where I was and wine taste at Steenberg or at Landsrack or at Liu. Go to the spa. They've got little areas set up here where you're by the pool and there's lots of gardens and places to social distance. Actually, Jennifer came and had tea with me here one evening, which was really lovely. And just, I think, be aware. I don't think any of us, I mean, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but I myself am constantly reminded at how much I need to decompress, even when I travel. And I'm just not interested in going sun up to sundown, jam packing my day, ticking off every box. I want an hour to sit outside and read or reflect or just close my eyes. And having a suite makes that a lot more possible, especially if you're traveling with other people. I was traveling solo, but I would encourage that. Landsrack is an absolutely just divine estate out in Stellenbosch. This is where you can bike ride, you can horse ride, you can hike. They're at the base of a nature preserve. My foot photo tells you where I am once again, but I mean, what a spa experience. And they have a beautiful kind of like aquatic center and fitness facility, very health oriented. And the suites are stunning. They did a renovation of the main lodge just a couple of years ago, but really just exceptionally well done. Landsrack, I did not know, you might know this, they are the first that ever commercially bottled Pinotage. And they have won more awards. Yeah, good. Andre knew. They have won more awards for all of their wines than they even have space to showcase. Every single wine that I tasted, I was in love with. I did a full cellar tour. So now here, things that are different. They're limiting their cellar tour to just in-house guests. So they're trying to limit the number of people because you are in a cellar, you are wearing masks. There were 2 other people on my tour. Plan ahead, figure out, am I going to stay at a property that's going to offer me these things that I want, because I might not want to be driving around or going and doing as much as I normally would that we're going to get back to again in the future. Or just check and make sure, are you open? Are you offering the same thing? Do I have to make an appointment? They also said that if you were a larger group, say a multi-gen family, they could, based on availability, do a private tour just for your booking. And then I ended up at Liu, and Liu has done some really remarkable things as well during this time. They extended their dining offerings and they built an atrium where you can be dining outside, but in this beautiful glass encasement. And then they built an additional deck so that there's more outdoor dining. So again, just more spaces for socially distancing. They turned one of their libraries into a bar for another space for people to be. They've redone a lot of their furnishings so that you've got these more small, intimate sitting areas for especially check-in times. I just thought this was interesting and different. Out of all of the welcome amenities that I got, theirs was wrapped in plastic. And they actually said to me, you know, this is so that people are aware and assured that it is safe and protected. Not saying one is better than the other. Again, everyone's going to do it in their own way. The spa here also is absolutely divine. They just entered into a partnership with Healing Earth. Also, they built a brand new Everard Reed gallery on property. and now Le Petit Colombe is located there. So some of your more famous and sought after restaurants and gallery experiences are on location with them, and they have a vineyard tour that you can walk around the entire property, through the herb garden, through the sculpture garden, out to the wine studio. You can spend lots of time walking around and still having your wine and your food and your art and all of the things that I love going to South Africa for, and I think probably most of our other clients and guests as well. And then this is just a photo of me at the Wilds in Joburg, mostly again just to showcase there's lots of green space, there's lots of open space, there are blue skies, fresh air, sunshine, all of the healing components of nature that we're looking for these days in South Africa. I just really think it's an amazing experience. The safari properties are incredible. Everyone's doing everything right and really looking forward to welcoming you back. And as I've said with any other country that I traveled to or we traveled to last year, now is the best time. There are very few people. You've got to be flexible. You've got to work with a partner. There are going to be hiccups, but it's all going to be worthwhile in the end. So I will stop there and start going with some Q&A. Jennifer and Andre, though, if you want to unmute yourselves while I kind of start looking at a couple of Q&As, if you want to maybe share the experiences that we were talking about beforehand, please go for it.
So I'll quickly start and just tell you about how we do the sanitizing and deal with clients on the ground in South Africa, in the cities. And then I'll let Andre tell you about our experience with the lady in Tanzania just over the New Year period, actually. So all our guides wear masks and we have sanitizers in the vehicles. We do temperature checks, and in fact most of the properties are doing temperature checks when you check in as well. The vehicles are sanitized after every day's activities, and remember, when you're traveling with us, you have sole use of the vehicle, so you're not having to worry about other people touching the inside of the vehicle. And we clean every evening, as I said before. Bags are sanitized before they're loaded into our vehicles. When you come out of the airport or when we pick you up from the hotel. What else did I want to say? Oh, the COVID app. I did see somebody had asked about that app. There's an app in South Africa that our government asked all residents in South Africa to sign up on this app, and it basically locates where you have been, and if in an area that you've been to, or a restaurant or whatever it is, somebody has reported that there's been a COVID case, then you will be notified by this app that you have been in an area where somebody has contracted COVID. And they've also asked that we tell all international visitors that come into South Africa that they need to have this. So we will be sending this to clients about 4 weeks prior to their travel. We don't send it now for June, for instance, but just before travel, we'll make sure that everybody has the right information. It's all on file with us. You don't have to worry about that. The airport lounges and restaurants, as Brooke said, it is a lot quieter in the airports. Not everything is open, but you know, most of our clients don't eat at the airports, and we will arrange for packed lunches. We've got some clients traveling now and they may not have meals on the planes, but we'll arrange to have a packed lunch for them before they leave the hotels. We do arrange the assistance at the airport, like Brooke was saying. Most of our clients have it anyway, and we always have had it. So you arrive, say, in Johannesburg, and somebody meets you at the aircraft, whisks you through immigration and through customs, collects your luggage, should I say, and then through customs to meet our guide or take you to the next flight. So that we have always done. We haven't always included it when somebody is on more of a budget, but we always tell people about it, and especially now, as Brooke said, even if you're on a budget, it may be worth just spending a little bit extra to have the convenience and be slickly moved across. So I think that pretty much covers the procedures with COVID. What I wanted to say is we all know that safari is very safe and it's lots of outdoor space in South Africa. And even most of the hotels, as Brooke was saying, have outdoor facilities, and we'd make it as easy as possible for people. I do know that all the places that are open, for instance, the cableway and any museums, etc., they are all limiting numbers at any given time. So you are safe. Restaurants are doing the same. They're not just filling it up like crazy. We did have at one stage all the youngsters going back to the bars, and they set off a bit of a spike, and our government closed down bars for 2 weeks. And already we've seen in the week that it's been closed that the curve is really flattening, and it is definitely under much more control. But when we send our clients to a restaurant, it is a much better experience. They're not crowded in. I know, Brooke, you felt somebody that you had met in Cape Town said they went to a restaurant that was overcrowded. We actually went to that restaurant after you spoke to me. I sent Michael, my son actually, to the restaurant on 2 evenings to go and check. But unannounced, he just arrived there to see what was going on. And actually they definitely did not overcrowd the restaurant. They were stopping people and not allowing people to come in. Good. So I think it was just a very unfortunate situation, or maybe those people just assumed it was full and it really wasn't. And I remember when we even saw, sorry?
I absolutely love right now, you even just saying this goes to show the level of detail that you put into everything that you do. The fact that I did say, I heard that this was an uncomfortable situation with this particular one, and that you sent Michael twice. I mean, that's that's why you work with Jennifer.
And the same with the cableway. We went to see, without being with clients or anything. We just went to observe what was going on, and it's definitely it's happening. They limiting the numbers. Everybody's sanitized. It's really everyone in South Africa is taking it very, very seriously. Yeah. So we don't really have a problem with that. I just want to have a look and see. I had made a few notes here.
While you do that, Jennifer, I'm going to quickly answer a couple of very easy questions.
Okay.
Right. So we spoke about the app, and I will also call that out in my trip report, but I downloaded it from the App Store. It is just like COVID South Africa. So that's an easy one, and Trans-Africa Safaris will send that as well, previous to any itinerary. In terms of explaining more about the QR code, what does it bring up? It depends on who's asking you to use the QR code. So for instance, many restaurants that I went to, you don't get a menu anymore. It was a QR code is on the table, and I would use my phone for the QR code, and it was the breakfast meal, or it was the spa menu, or it was the health form. So the QR code is going to bring up different documents based upon what the actual experience is. But just, people should make sure that they are somewhat familiar with how to use a QR code, which I was not. I had to have one of my participants show me because I'm not a tech person.
And I think there's a question later about, do you need data on your phone to be able to handle that? And, most hotels or restaurants, when you arrive, you can actually log onto their Wi-Fi and it'll work fine.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll give you the detail and you do it on your phone, so no touch.
Exactly. We do have an international data plan. We personally use T-Mobile. It just works for us well across Africa. However, pretty much everywhere that you are going to go now at this point in time has internet for you, and quite honestly, transfer vehicles as well. So, you don't have to have a data plan in order to be able to use those things. For the app, you just have to make sure that Bluetooth is turned on. The name of the Michelin-starred restaurant that I spoke about, so at Swalu Kalahari, that I work with in the green Kalahari of South Africa, we have partnered with a man named Jan Hendrik,
Van der Westhuizen,
who is
she can't pronounce that.
I can barely pronounce my husband's last name. So we partnered with him, and he has a restaurant in Nice called Jan. That's Jan, Jan. And his next restaurant is Klein Jan, Klein, which means small or little in Afrikaans, and that's at Swallow. So guests staying at Swallow will have a dinner experience included at Klein Jan once it is opened sometime in the spring. And as I get more information on that, I'll be able to share more of that with you. Jennifer, if you have notes that you want to...
No, I just, that was all. And really, we can do all that. Again, as you say, the special meals can be a little tricky, but then we'll just give very basic pack for en route travel. It won't be anything fancy because that's not always that easy, but we will give them something that will be suitable to eat, to fill their little tummies. And then I think Andre must... Sorry, Andre?
You know, I think everybody traveling at these times, I think, as Brooke mentioned multiple times, they need to have the right mindset, you know, be flexible, be accommodating, have a little patience, because, you know, the situation is dynamic. Things change. It's very fluid. What's happening today and what's the rules and regulations at any one given time may change. You know, it may change while you're in country. I mean, we had a single lady traveling in Tanzania, and she arrived in Tanzania and she didn't need any COVID tests prior to leaving, but she was in Chemchem, and the rules changed, and she was advised that you know, prior to leaving Zanzibar, she would need to have a COVID test, and it wasn't a problem. We organized for her to have the test done at a hotel in Zanzibar, and payment was handled on her behalf. So, you know, just be prepared that things do change. It is a fluid situation on the ground, but in most of the countries we're operating in, and certainly many of them have been open to international visitors for many months. South Africa itself, you know, we were open since late September for domestic travel, and all the procedures and protocols, I mean, prior to Brooke's trip, you know, she will advocate. They work. They've been tested. They've been utilized, and where adjustments need to be made, you know, they do that at the time when they realize that there might be a little glitch. But it is working, and people can travel safely in the comfort, knowing that, you know, the guidelines and the health protocols are in place. And in terms of the offerings on the ground, I think there is no doubt, you know, whether you at a country hotel or whether you're in a city hotel or whether you're out in the wild open spaces where you've got a multitude of, you know, private villas, you've got family suites, you've got small little lodges where you've got 3 rooms. There is nothing better in terms of getting away and having these private spaces and feeling, you know, isolated and just spending time with your family and loved ones. So, you know, South Africa, our neighboring countries, the rest of Africa, we have those options in spades. So, you know, people, depending on what they're looking for, they can certainly travel safe in the knowledge that the protocols and the accommodation types are readily available.
I think the follow, you know, just to follow up on what Andre is saying there, I was not on this trip, of course, but, you know, did an earlier one to Zambia, Uganda. You know, some of you were on those webinars. The key is, like, you know, we discuss now everything that can possibly go wrong and what the experience is and everything like that. If I think back of those 2 trips, I mean, that's faded into the background. All I remember is that I escaped to Africa and away from all the craziness here. And I have wonderful memories of that trip, because that's the key. You know, yes, we go and make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's and do a whole lot of stuff behind the scenes, the cleaning and the this and the that. But if I'm looking back at those trips, I just had a fantastic time. And that's what Africa can offer to people. You can't go to Europe at the moment. You can't go to Australia, New Zealand. You're in Asia. Probably don't want to go to South America, maybe some parts. But Africa, you can go and have a fantastic trip. And that to me is the key. Like, you can actually escape. You can go and just retain your sanity a little bit. The weather is great this time of the year. It's nice to get away from winters. And though we kind of look at all the details and what can all possibly go wrong, with no one's trip does all of this happen. I mean, you just need a bit of flexibility and, maybe up front and the back and, and have a good partner on the ground that's going to sort everything out that, if an airline decides suddenly like KLM there that announce that from tomorrow you need a COVID test, okay, we'll make a plan. We'll make it work. Don't stress. You're on a fantastic trip. So to me, that's the bottom line. You can actually have a beautiful trip to Africa at this point in time. And, I can't wait to get back.
So much so that even after, so I stayed in South Africa an extra week to hang out with my friends alone. And that's where some of my issues came up because I just didn't want to leave. And so South Africa was basically like, now we're not going to let you leave. So by the time I finally got home, I had about 3 or 4 days of jet lag. And then I woke up and I started planning a trip to Kenya. So clearly I can't stay away. Couple of questions though that I will answer. So I get that COVID testing timing is tricky. Hold on, I want to.
That's probably the biggest challenge that you have in some places or some states. It's just lining up a COVID test. That varies by area.
Yeah, so we've spoken about getting COVID tests. I know before. Johan and I we are beyond blessed because in Colorado, Kaiser is doing 24-hour turnaround times, and it's complimentary because that's our health insurance policy. And I know that that's not the case in other parts of the world or other states. So what I am telling people, it's just what I'm telling people because I want to cover my bases and make sure that we're doing the best that we can for everyone, is to plan to get your test with a 24-hour turnaround time from when you're leaving home. Now, I know that that's not possible for everyone with local clinics or health insurance companies or on and on. It kind of goes to spend a little bit extra money right now, and it's going to make your experience a lot more seamless. Every other person that I have spoken with who has had great results with the at-home testing kits, like COVID consultants or others, are doing the same thing for their clients. So I know people that have, I could probably look back on 5 different at-home opportunities now. What I will say that was interesting, because of flight changes, okay, so one person who was flying on Virgin out of New York went to check in for Virgin 24 hours before the flight was supposed to take off. And Virgin said, no, actually your flight is now tonight. You have 7 or 8 hours to get to the airport for your flight. He did not have time to get his hard copy COVID test. So he did the entire experience showing them the COVID test on his phone and he was fine. I had the printout of mine. Some people used the COVID consultants. I really think that just whatever your clients can do to get set up, to get your test within the shortest possible window is going to make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable. In terms of what happens with canceled flights en route, if the test expires, what I have heard from people, I have not experienced this myself, but what I have heard from people is, for instance, like in Frankfurt, this happened to someone who I know, where they were forced to stay 2 nights at the airport hotel in Frankfurt while they took another test. Every airport is going to be different. Every country is going to be different. It kind of gets to the whole heart of what we're talking about here, where once you know what your client's routing is, and I will encourage direct and through the Middle East as much as possible, looking right now at, Q1, Q2 until things normalize a little bit more, then start actually looking at all of those different plans, the airports, and figuring it out and just get ahead of any of those hiccups to make it better for them. That's kind of what I think I can say about that.
And someone that I spoke to actually had an interesting strategy. They got their test and within the 72-hour window, and then they actually just went for another test a day, on their way to the airport. It's an extra, in their case was, I don't know, $50 or whatever. But in the bigger scheme of things versus the cost of your safari, it's nothing. So they just got that backup test. So while they were in the air, that was getting processed. So if they got delayed anywhere else, by the time they get the result from that, they could have just printed that out. And that'll be, again, it resets the clock as to when the test was taken. So they had one within the 72-hour window and just as a backup did one right the day that they were flying out. That evening, they did it that afternoon. So they got it the next day and they ended up not needing it. But, you know, if they were delayed, they would have been covered.
I forgot about that. There were multiple people that I traveled with that also got multiple COVID tests day after day after day because they didn't have to pay for it. So I understand that a lot of this might come down to cost, but that's a very good point. Question for you both, Andre and Jennifer. Do you have any news about SAA domestic flights returning?
Not yet, not at the moment. And actually, we wrote to South African Airways yesterday to ask them and haven't had a reply. But SA Airlink is doing a lot of the routes now, and British Airways has started again. So you are able to get around. It might just not be as easy as booking South African Airways was, but we will work it out for you. And hopefully you can be using like the light aircrafts, like to Swallow and into the Kruger area. You don't have to go through the major airports.
South African Airways, they're not flying, but they've definitely got headwinds. So
sorry?
They're not out of the woods yet. I mean, they've still got good few challenges that they need.
Everyone else has picked up the slack, you know, so you can fly.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of options, absolutely. But
So
whether they take back to the skies, you know, I think that's there's still a question mark there, and I'm sure it'll happen at some point. But when it's going to happen is another question.
So then we did know that this was going to come up. It says, how has the new strain of COVID impacted travel in South Africa? And do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the news around the new strain or what's happening in South Africa now, along with what are the minimum requirements again now for hotels that are mandated by the government? So kind of what's happening with what the government is doing right now?
So they still have hotels that are quarantine hotels, and quarantine is 14 days if you are infected. So if you've arrived in South Africa, even though you've had a test in America and you were clear, but now you have a temperature, they'll obviously take you, wait a little while, take another temperature check, or they'll do a COVID test. And you'll have to go into quarantine until such time as that test result comes out. But there are places and there are some hotels that you can go to, that hotels are good enough for our kind of clients, and they'll just be in quarantine. I mean, we've been very fortunate. We haven't actually had anyone contract the COVID, international travelers. Yes, there are locals all over the show, like you guys. But for the most part, people are wearing their gloves, their masks, sanitizing, social distancing, and people are being very, very careful. And our clients are going to be very careful. Nobody can guarantee anything. And this new wave is a concern. I mean, how many more or new strains could there be out there? But they seem to be getting it under control. They put us into a slightly stricter lockdown. It's level 3, but it's adjusted, and it is only until the 15th of January, but we've seen great improvements. And I think that they've done the right thing. I think our government, I think they've been very good at the way they handle the situation. When the spike comes, they jump on it and put things in place. So I think we do pretty well. Not so, Andre?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is virulent, and it seems to be spreading. It's doing the rounds, but it is, as you say, I think the procedures and the measures are in place to manage what is happening on the ground. And you know, for whatever reason, it seems to be targeting more of the younger population, and they're the ones that seem to obviously have the immunity and are less impacted by it. There are not that many older people or middle-aged folk that seem to be getting infected with the new variant right now, but it is out there, and I'd certainly what is more active than you know, the variant that was before, the original COVID-19. But yeah, I think you know, we, as those of you that have visited our part of the world, I mean, you'll know we've got amazing medical care. if you've got the vaccination, I think you're in good shape. There's certainly no suggestions at this current point in time that the new variant is not covered by the existing vaccines that are in place, whether it's Pfizer, AstraZeneca, or Moderna. So I think, yeah, if you've taken the vaccine, you're good to go, and rest assured, you know, with our support on the ground and with the health facilities that we have, you know, you can travel with a lot of confidence.
I think from everything I've seen and read too, this doesn't make you sicker. It doesn't, you know, have a higher mortality rate or anything like that. And the vaccine still works against it. So all of the procedures that Brooke outlined at the hotels and everything like that, the mask, the sanitizer, works just as well against the new variant as any old variant. I mean, and let's say your chances were, God knows what, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 that you were somewhere and you could pick it up. Now it's 1.7 out of 1,000 or in 100, like you're 1.5. So it's not that, oh, now you've got double the, you know, it's like, it doesn't have that big of an impact. But it is obviously something that when it first came out, that's where people canceled a couple of flights at short notice. And hopefully, I mean, it seems like now it's already all over in number of states in the US and almost every country. So it'll just be the new normal in a week. And then we'll deal with it through the vaccines and through being safe, masks and everything.
I think that this whole new strain, it's the youngsters that go out partying, and you know what happens, they have a few drinks and they forget about it, and they share a glass of wine, or they all smoke each other's cigarettes, and they're hugging and kissing, and you know, it's a terrible situation to be in. But the more mature people, and I can't say everybody, but more mature people do behave a little bit differently and are aware that we really need to be careful. So it doesn't mean that it is only the youngsters, but that is definitely what caused the second spike. And I think they've nipped that in the bud. Well, you know, our government really clamps down on them. Like our curfew is now 9 o'clock at night. So, you know, the youngsters can't go out partying with their friends and things like that. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to make a good improvement.
I think both very valid points as well. I mean, you know, it's a shame. We know this, like something happens in Africa and all of a sudden it's this big thing. It happens in Europe and it's not as big of a thing. I mean, it's in the UK right now. It's in the States right now, as Johan mentioned as well. It's now like just this is the next iteration of what we're dealing with, but we had to deal with it first in South Africa. And unfortunately, that paints a negative kind of tone to the picture. But we were looking at statistics the other day for something, and just as a kind of comparison, still with everything going on, if you look at the United States, active cases, 64 per 100,000. South Africa, 24 per 100,000. South Africa still has 1/3 the number when you look at the overall population, and the population distribution is different. And that actually, I would say then kind of leads to the next question. When we look at population distribution, are you taking visitors into townships right now? What's happening with the township tours?
Well, we aren't at the moment, but people can go in. I just think that one needs to be very careful now. And in the townships, it's a lot closer. People are living a lot closer. And I think that we need to be very careful. And I wouldn't recommend it right now. If they want to give back or be involved in something we could arrange some kind of visit somewhere, but I wouldn't go into the townships personally at this stage.
I agree. Does anybody have a notion, just because this is a question, so I'll address it, of what is going on with vaccine distribution in South Africa right now? Is there anything to speak about?
I'm trying to figure out Colorado. So.
I know. Johan and I are both like, maybe we can get it for work? Are we essential? I think we're essential workers.
Well, let's hope so. I think, you know, through the World Health Organization, we're part of their COVAX program. And there's been a few noises raised about, you know, the rate at which we're receiving the vaccine and the quantities that we're getting. And I think whether correct or otherwise, I think the government has suddenly raised their game. And initially it looked like it was going to be available in April, May, and not in sufficient quantities. I mean, maybe for the frontline healthcare workers and medical staff and the elderly, but not much beyond that. I mean, you hear about the UK getting 100 million doses, and I think that more than covers their population. But now in the last week or two, I think they're looking at February, March, getting the first vaccines available in the country. And they're certainly looking to get considerably larger quantities of the vaccine. So, but again, I think if the visitor has been vaccinated, it doesn't really, I mean, obviously you'd like to know you're coming into a fairly safe environment, and certainly we will take the greatest care to ensure that you are traveling in surroundings that are going to be safe. But whether the population's been vaccinated or not, I think if you vaccinated as the visitor, you're in good shape.
I agree with that a lot, Andre, as well. I mean, like I just said, Johan and I have no idea when we're even going to be able to get it. But if I look at every other country in Africa or other countries, it's the slow rollout of who needs it first and what is available. But again, I mean, I haven't even checked on the vaccine rollout in Kenya, and I'm counting down days. Because similarly to South Africa, I know I'm safe on safari, I'm socially distanced in the bush, I have a bubble of people that I'm traveling with, and I'm taking every precaution for myself personally, and I'm choosing properties that are doing everything in their power as well. So what's happening with the rest of the country, obviously I want everyone to be safe, and I want for us as a world to get back on track, but that's not going to limit my choice of destination to go to.
Yes.
That is the key. I mean, I think that's really...
And we don't know. I mean, there's a couple of other, vaccines in the pipeline. Some of them may get approved. The new AstraZeneca one it's much easier to make and transport and distribute. So, I mean, tomorrow they open a factory building more of this, and suddenly the timelines change. So it's kind of hard to predict. But hopefully, we'll, right the ship soon and get back on track with everything.
And at the end of the day, I will echo what Johan said as well. I got home, and within a week, the only thing that I think about are the happy memories and the friends and the warm weather. Believe me, the warm weather, because it's cold out there right now. And the wine tasting and the safari and just the absolute relaxation. I mean, at the end of the day, I like what you said. You get home, and all you remember is having an amazing safari. So hopefully,
Brooke, you were here in the height of our pandemic. I mean, you were here when there were thousands of people in Cape Town, because everybody comes to Cape Town for their school holidays in South Africa. So you had thousands of people around. The COVID was at a peak, and yes, you saw that we can manage it. Exactly. That's what we really love.
Well, and that's exactly what I say as well, is again, the majority of guests going to South Africa are not me. They haven't lived there. They don't have family and friends. I mean, I was going out of my way to socialize with local people in a way that tourists they won't do. They just won't do it. So yeah, I know I put myself in the flame, and I'm very happy I did, because I learned things that hopefully help all of you as well. Hold on one second. Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that. I will keep traveling without a vaccine myself. People have to make their own decisions as to what works for them at any age. I have a very dear friend who is my age who will not go with me to South Africa until she gets a vaccine, because she has asthma. I will continue to travel without a vaccine. Every single decision for a trip has to be made by the individual, and none of us can make those decisions for people.
And that question was on, what if you have younger people traveling later in the year that may not have access to the vaccine yet? And my point is, we traveled last year. Their vaccine wasn't even approved yet. And, both Brooke's trip to Kenya and South Africa that we discussed here today, and our joint trips to Uganda and Zambia, I never felt unsafe. I felt it was fairly easy Some of those countries have very low numbers. Some have very deep precautions, like in South Africa, that have higher numbers, but still much lower than where we are. And yeah, I mean, that's, as Brooke says, it's a, it's a decision everyone would make. But the key is you can already travel with and without a vaccine. With a vaccine, obviously, oh, that's a lot nicer, or less things to worry, and you can kind of be a bit more lax. And without the vaccine, we've already pulled off all these trips, and I think it's quite doable right now without endangering yourself in some risky way. And you can actually have a wonderful experience and also restore your sanity, because once you're there, you kind of pretty quickly get into the experience and don't even realize or less notice it less, especially when you're out on safari and the likes. Okay.
So I think we're good. I think I've answered all questions, or we've touched on all topics.
We're always an email away or something if you have more questions. The same with Andre and Jennifer. Yeah. We'll send everyone's details in the follow-up as well as and the recording to this. Feel free to share it with your colleagues or even potential clients who wants to go, anything like that. Brooke and I are here. We can do conference calls. We can help you, get the clients over that little hump if they just can't wrap their head around what's it going to be like and they're unsure, uncertain. We've all seen and worked on bookings recently where right at the end, the clients are like, just going to wait a little while more and stuff. If we can help in any way, just let us know. We're here. We can do conference calls. We can set up a Zoom like this with you and the clients and answer their questions. And we'll do it honestly. And, it may be that they decide to travel later, and it may be that they decide now is the time to go. It's really up to them. So just let us know when we can help. And thank you.
Hats off to you guys, Johan and Brooke. I think, it's... You've really been the pioneers. Well, I'm sure there've been a good couple of people traveling out of the States, but I mean, you guys have been very vocal, and you've been sharing your travel experiences far and wide, through your trip reports and social media. And I really think it is invaluable information, in these times to help agents and for them to share with their clients, to allay any fears. I mean, a lot of people, even before COVID was around, they had some skepticism about what to expect in Africa, and I think now that's probably changed as well. But I think to provide them with this level of comfort and certainty that they're going to come back to the US in one piece is good to know.
Well, thank you very much, Andre and Jennifer. I really appreciate your time and joining us all. Everybody else who joined us, thank you so much for your time. This is, like I said, this is the best way for me to start my year, is to see all of you and to talk about Africa and to get this year back on track for all of us and our clients and partners and friends. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
It's a good one. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.